My name is Adanna, and for 13 years, I was a good wife in a marriage where being good meant giving up pieces of myself. I kept the house clean. I made dinner on time. I laughed at his jokes even when they made me feel small. I stopped seeing my friend Chioma after he said she was too opinionated. I quit my nursing assistant job when he said it embarrassed him that his wife cleaned up after strangers. My husband Obinna wasn't a monster, and that was the problem. Monsters are easy to recognize. Obinna was clever enough to hide the parts of him that broke me. He never hit me, he provided for me, he went to church, and our neighbors thought we were blessed. His mother called me lucky. But lucky women don't rehearse conversations in their heads for hours before speaking. Lucky women don't check their husband's mood before deciding whether to mention they need new shoes. Lucky women don't feel relief when their husband travels for work. It started small, the way poison always does. You're not good with money, baby. Let me handle it. So I stopped accessing our joint account. He gave me a weekly allowance for groceries. I was 26. You're too trusting. People will take advantage. So I stopped mentioning friends. Stopped accepting invitations. Eventually, they stopped calling. You always misremember things. Good thing I'm here to keep you straight. So I started doubting my own memory, my own perceptions, my own mind. The erosion was so gradual I didn't notice I was disappearing. By year 7, I asked permission to visit my sister. By year 10, I apologized for crying. By year 13, I had become a ghost in my own life. Functional, pleasant, and utterly silent about anything real. If you're watching this and you see yourself in what I'm describing, please hit that like button and subscribe. This story is for you. You're not alone and you're not crazy. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Suralere. He worked in logistics. I stayed home because we couldn't afford childcare, even though we had no children. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I'd learned not to point out ironies. Every Sunday, he'd gather our neighbors to watch football. He'd hold court, telling stories where he was always the hero and I was always the fool, burning dinner, getting lost, misunderstanding simple instructions. Everyone would laugh. I'd laugh too. Hands shaking as I served beer and pepper soup. She's lucky she has you, they'd say. He'd smile. Someone has to take care of her. That smile. God, that smile. It said, you're mine. You'll always be mine. Where else would you go? He was right. I had nowhere to go. My family thought I was blessed. I had no job, no savings he didn't control, no independence I hadn't surrendered in the name of being a good wife. But something was shifting. It started the day I saw my reflection in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize myself. My eyes were older than my face. My mouth had forgotten how to form opinions. I looked like a woman who'd been holding her breath for over a decade. That night, lying beside him as he snored, I thought, this will be my whole life. The weight of that realization was crushing. 39 years old, and this was it. This careful, frightened silence. This performance of gratitude. This slow disappearance. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the next. It took me 4 months to say the words. For months of rehearsing in my head. For months of imagining his reaction. For months of feeling my heart pound every time I thought about having the conversation. I chose a Saturday afternoon. He was watching television, relaxed. I'd made his favorite, jollof rice with fried plantain. I sat down. My hands were shaking. Obinna, I want a divorce. The words came out smaller than I'd practiced. Weaker. But they came out. He didn't look at me. Just kept watching the TV, sipping his malt drink. The silence stretched so long I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. Then he smiled. Not an angry smile. Not a hurt smile. A knowing smile. You want a divorce, he repeated, like I'd suggested we rearrange the furniture. Yes. Okay. He took another sip. Still smiling. Still not looking at me. We'll see. That was it. No argument. No questions. No emotion. Just we'll see. Something about his calmness terrified me more than rage would have. It wasn't the reaction of a man who thought he might lose something. It was the reaction of a man who knew he wouldn't. Over the next few weeks, nothing changed. He didn't bring up the conversation. Didn't ask why. Didn't try to fix anything. He was cheerful, even more attentive than he'd been in years, bringing me small gifts, complimenting my cooking, touching my shoulder as he passed. It felt like being petted. If you're still watching, I want you to know, leaving isn't always the hardest part. Sometimes it's the waiting, the planning, the fear of what comes next. Drop a comment below if you've ever felt trapped like this. Your story matters. I started researching divorce lawyers on my phone, deleting the browser history immediately after. I called a women's shelter from a pay phone, pretending I was asking for a friend. They told me to document everything, financial records, communications, any evidence of control. But I had nothing. No bank access. No paper trail. Just years of careful conversations and strategic helplessness. I felt stupid for even trying. Then, 3 weeks after my divorce request, I found the package. I wasn't snooping. Let me be clear about that. I was putting away laundry, his clothes, because I'd been doing his laundry for 13 years, when I noticed something wedged behind his drawer. A small cloth bundle, tied with red thread. My stomach dropped. I knew what it was before I opened it. Inside, a photo of me, taken from our wedding album. My face had been scratched out. There were herbs I didn't recognize. A piece of paper with my name written 9 times. Small cowrie shells, and something that looked like dried blood. My hands went numb. Beside it, folded carefully, a receipt from Baba Oloran Spiritual Solutions in Mushin. The itemized list made my skin crawl. Obedience binding. 45,000 Nigerian nairas tongue-tying ritual. 25,000 Nigerian nairas return to sender marriage protection. 35,000 Nigerian nairas submission enhancement. 30,000 Nigerian nairas. Total, 135,000 Nigerian nairas. More than he'd ever spent on me in a single year. There was a voice note on a phone I didn't recognize. A backup phone he must have hidden. I played it. "Oga, the work is done," a man's voice said. "Your wife will not trouble you again. She will forget this divorce foolishness. Her mind is now under control. She will be sweet and agreeable like before. This Juju is very strong. She cannot resist it." Obina's voice. "You're sure? She won't leave?" "Impossible. The binding is complete. She is yours. Her will belongs to you now." I sat on the bedroom floor, holding this evidence of his complete contempt for my humanity. He hadn't tried to understand me, hadn't tried to change, hadn't even tried to convince me. He tried to control my mind. He genuinely believed that some herbs and shells and scratched-out photos would erase my free will, that he could purchase my obedience, that my personhood was something he could bind with red thread and blood. The level of arrogance was breathtaking. And then, sitting there on that floor, holding proof of his delusion, something crystallized in my mind. If he believed I was under a spell, if he believed my will was bound, if he believed he'd won, then he'd stop being careful. People are always most careless when they think they've already won. I carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Every fold, every placement. I'd learned precision from 13 years of walking on eggshells. Then I went to the kitchen and started dinner. But inside, something had shifted. The fear was still there. I'm not going to pretend I suddenly became fearless. But underneath the fear was something harder, colder, more patient. He wanted me controlled, obedient, submissive. Fine. I'd give him exactly what he paid for. The next morning, I woke up and became the spell. I made his favorite breakfast, yam porridge with fish. When he came to the table, I smiled warmly. "I've been thinking," I said softly, "about what I said. About the divorce." He looked up, fork paused halfway to his mouth. Watching. "I was confused," I continued. "I don't know what came over me. You've been so good to me. I'm sorry I said those things." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Satisfaction. Vindication. "It's okay, baby," he said, magnanimous. "Women get emotional sometimes. I understand." I nodded, smiled, served him more fish. Inside, I was taking notes. Women get emotional sometimes. Recorded. Noted. Evidence of condescension. Over the next few weeks, I became the wife he'd always wanted me to be. I asked his opinion on everything. What should I cook? What should I wear? Should I visit my sister? I made sure every decision flowed through him, required his approval, demonstrated my dependence. I stopped mentioning divorce, stopped seeming distant. I laughed at his jokes, leaned into his shoulder during church, apologized for small things that didn't require apologies. If any of you watching this have ever had to perform survival, you know what this cost. You know how it feels to smile when you want to scream. Please, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Someone who's still performing. But while I was performing submission, I was also watching, listening, documenting. Because here's what happens when a controlling man thinks he's won completely. He stops hiding. At dinner, he'd say things like, "See how much better things are when you just listen. When you don't fight me." Recorded on my phone, hidden in my pocket. To his friends, "I told you that divorce talk wouldn't last. Women need firm guidance. You just have to know how to handle them." Noted. Dated. Witnesses present. To his mother, on speakerphone while I wasn't listening. She tried to leave, Ma. Can you imagine? But I handled it. She knows where she belongs now. Every word documented. He started saying the quiet parts out loud. You know you can't make it without me, right? He'd say. Casual, like commenting on the weather. Where would you even go? You have no skills, no money, no options. This is your life. I'd nod, agree, say nothing. But my phone was recording. The thing about coercive control is that it's hard to prove. It's not bruises or broken bones. It's the systematic erosion of autonomy, the isolation, the financial dependency, the constant message that you're incompetent, emotional, irrational. It's invisible until the abuser feels safe enough to say it explicitly. And Adanna felt very safe. He started giving me advice in front of neighbors. Adanna has trouble with numbers, so I handle all the finances. It's better that way. Everyone would nod. Poor Adanna. Lucky she has such a responsible husband. Documented. He'd explain to his brothers why he gave me a weekly allowance. You have to control the money or they'll waste it. It's just how women are. Recorded. At a family gathering, his cousin asked why I wasn't working. She doesn't need to work, Adanna said. Her job is taking care of me. Besides, she's not really qualified for anything serious. I'd been a nursing assistant. I'd helped save lives. Documented. 3 months into my performance, I had hours of recordings, dated notes, screenshots of financial control. Every time he denied me access to our accounts, every weekly allowance tracked and noted. Witness names for every public humiliation. But I needed something more. I needed him to confess the spell. Getting him to talk about the Juju required patience. I waited for the right moment, when he was drunk enough to be loose, but not so drunk he wouldn't remember. When his friends were over, bragging about their own wives. How did you get her to drop the divorce thing? One of them asked. My wife threatens it every other week. Adanna laughed, poured more whiskey. This was his moment. There are ways, he said, grinning. Traditional ways. I was in the kitchen, but the door was open. My phone was recording from the counter. What, like Juju? Another laugh. But interested. I'm serious, Adanna said. You think I was going to let her disrespect me like that? Let her just walk away. I went to see Baba Olorin in Mushin. Powerful man. He did a binding. A binding? Come on. I'm telling you, look at her now. Sweet. Agreeable. The way she used to be. The way a wife should be. You really believe that stuff works? Look at the evidence. His voice was thick with satisfaction. 3 months ago she wanted divorce. Now she apologizes for breathing too loud. The binding works, my brother. It works. They laughed. Clinked glasses. I stood in that kitchen, hands steady, and felt nothing but cold clarity. He just confessed to attempting to control my will through supernatural means. In front of witnesses. On recording. Even if the spell wasn't real, and it wasn't, his belief was real. His intent was real. His systematic efforts to control me were real. And now I had proof. I found a lawyer through a domestic violence organization. Her name was Mrs. Adebayo, and she was the first person in 13 years who listened to me like I was intelligent. This is complex, she said, reviewing my documentation. Coercive control, financial abuse, psychological manipulation. The Juju element actually helps. It demonstrates his mindset, his belief that your autonomy is something he can eliminate. Can we prove it? You've already proven it. She gestured to my notes. 3 months of evidence, recordings, witnesses, financial records showing he controlled all assets, documentation of isolation tactics, and his own admission that he sought supernatural means to control your will. What do I do now? Now. She looked at me directly. Now you file. But once you do, you can't go back to that house. Do you have somewhere safe? My sister. Chioma had been waiting for my call for 13 years. Yes, I said. I have somewhere. The divorce filing was strategic. We didn't just request dissolution of marriage. We documented everything. The financial control, the isolation, the systematic degradation, the psychological abuse. We included transcripts of the recordings, witness statements, the receipt from the Juju seller as evidence of his controlling mindset. We filed for full financial disclosure, split of marital assets, and a restraining order based on his stated belief that he'd magically bound my will. When Adanna was served the papers, he called me 17 times. I didn't answer. His text escalated. What is this nonsense? You're under contract with me. You can't leave. The binding is permanent. You belong to me. I paid good money to keep you. You can't break it. Every text was evidence. Every message was another nail. The hearing was surreal. Obinna showed up confident. He'd hired a lawyer. He thought this would be simple: dispute the claims, deny everything, paint me as emotional and unstable. But then Mrs. Adebayo played the recordings. His voice, clear and distinct: women need firm guidance. You just have to know how to handle them. You know you can't make it without me. You have no skills, no money, no options. I went to see Baba Olorin in Mushin. He did a binding. Look at her now. Sweet, agreeable, the way a wife should be. The judge's expression hardened with each recording. Then the financial records, 13 years of controlled access. Weekly allowances tracked and documented. His accounts showing full access to marital assets. My accounts showing nothing. Then the witness statements. Neighbors, family members, church members, all testifying to his public comments about my incompetence, his control, his stated belief that I needed his management. Then the receipt. The itemized list of services purchased to control my mind. Obinna's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Obinna himself had gone pale. Mr. Obinna, the judge said, did you or did you not seek out a spiritual practitioner to, quote, bind your wife's will? Mr. Obinna, the receipt has your signature. It's not illegal, he stammered. It's traditional spiritual practice. No, the judge said, but it demonstrates intent to control your wife through any means available to you, including attempts to eliminate her autonomy. Combined with the financial control, the isolation tactics, and your own recorded admissions, this court finds substantial evidence of coercive control and psychological abuse. If you've made it this far, thank you for bearing witness to this story. These experiences need to be heard. Hit that like button and subscribe. These stories need to reach people who are still living them. The divorce was granted. Full financial disclosure revealed accounts I didn't know existed. Savings, investments, property. 13 years of we can't afford it, while he built wealth I wasn't allowed to access. The court awarded me half of everything. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. The restraining order was approved based on his attempts to control me through supernatural means and his stated belief that I belonged to him. But the real consequences came from his own community. See, the thing about controlling men is that their power depends on image, on being seen as reasonable, protective, in charge. When the details of the case became public, and in our community, these things always become public, the image shattered. His friends heard the recordings of him bragging about the juju. His church heard about the financial control. His family heard his own words. You just have to know how to handle them. His mother, the woman who'd called me lucky, stopped speaking to him. She called me instead. I didn't know, she said. I didn't know he was like his father. That one sentence told me everything. The neighbors who'd laughed at his jokes suddenly remembered them differently. The woman who'd said I was lucky to have him cross the street to avoid him. His brothers distanced themselves. Nobody wanted to be associated with the man who tried to use juju to control his wife. At church, during testimony time, someone mentioned husbands who think they can own their wives like property. The pastor nodded meaningfully. Obinna stopped attending. His job in logistics required trust, reputation. When word spread about the coercive control case, his business relationships cooled. Clients found other vendors. Nobody wanted to work with a man who couldn't be trusted with basic respect for his wife's autonomy. The humiliation wasn't something I orchestrated. It was something he'd built himself, brick by brick, with every controlling word and every belief that I was property to be managed. The spell hadn't bound me. It had trapped him. Because when you believe your wife is magically compelled to obey you, you stop hiding your contempt. You speak openly about your control. You confess to your friends. You put it in texts. And all of that becomes evidence. I moved in with Chioma first, then found a small flat in Yaba. 1 bedroom, modest mine. I got a job at a private clinic. Turns out my nursing assistant certification was still valid, still valuable. My hands remembered the work. My mind remembered the competence Obinna had spent 13 years telling me I didn't have. The other nurses treated me like an equal. Imagine that. Being treated like you have something to contribute. I opened my own bank account. My own account. Money I earned, money I controlled. The first time I checked the balance and saw my savings growing, I cried. Not sad tears. Released tears. Chioma helped me slowly reconnect with old friends. They were cautious at first. 13 years is a long silence, but patient. Understanding. We knew something was wrong, one of them said. We just didn't know how to reach you. I started therapy. Started untangling 13 years of learned helplessness and strategic submission. started recognizing which of my thoughts were mine and which were his voice, planted so deep-eyed thought they belonged to me. You're not good with money. Lie. You're too trusting. Translation, I want you isolated. You always misremember. Gaslighting. Every session was an excavation, finding myself under years of his shaping. And slowly, so slowly, I started to remember who I'd been before. The girl who'd wanted to be a nurse, who'd laughed easily, who'd had opinions she didn't apologize for. She wasn't gone. She'd just been waiting. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Adanna at the market. He looked smaller somehow, older. He saw me and his face did something complicated, shame, anger, something like fear. I waited for the panic to rise, the old fear, the automatic apology. It didn't come. Adanna, he said. Adanna, I replied. Neutral, civil. You look. He trailed off. Different. I was different. I'd gained weight, healthy weight, not stress weight. My skin was clearer. I smiled more. I wore colors I liked instead of colors that didn't draw attention. I'm well, I said. He seemed to struggle for words. That thing you did, the recordings, the lawyer, that was clever. It was necessary. The Juju was supposed to work, he said, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Baba Oloran promised. You were supposed to stay. Adanna, I said gently. There is no magic that makes a person stay where they don't want to be. There's only choice. And I chose myself. He looked at me like I'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. Maybe I had. I walked away, bought my groceries, went home to my small flat where nobody monitored my spending or tracked my time or told me what to think. And I realized the spell had worked, just not the way he'd intended. For 13 years, he'd been binding me, not with juju, but with fear, with financial control, with systematic messages that I was incompetent, emotional, incapable. The moment I saw that receipt, the moment I understood what he'd done, something broke. Not me. The spell. The real spell. The one he'd been casting every day with his words and his control and his careful, systematic erosion of my selfhood. The juju didn't bind me. His belief that it had, that's what freed me. Because his overconfidence made him careless. His certainty made him confess. His arrogance made him speak openly about his control, and every word became evidence. He tried to use magic to trap me, and instead, he'd trapped himself. If you're watching this and you're still in that marriage, that relationship, that situation where someone treats your autonomy like something they can eliminate, listen to me. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. If you have to rehearse conversations before having them, if you monitor someone's mood before speaking, if you've learned to make yourself smaller to avoid conflict, that's not love. That's control. And control, no matter how it's disguised, is abuse. I won't tell you to just leave. Leaving is complicated. It requires resources, planning, safety. I won't diminish that reality. But I will tell you this, document everything. Every controlling statement. Every financial restriction. Every time they tell you you're incompetent or too emotional or lucky to have them. Every witness to their public diminishment of you. Write it down. Date it. Save it somewhere safe. Because one day, when you're ready, that documentation will be your evidence, your proof, your validation that what you experienced was real. And if they believe they've won, if they think they've successfully controlled you, let them believe it. Let them get comfortable. Let them speak freely. Arrogant people always confess eventually. The magic wasn't in herbs or shells or scratched photographs. The magic was in patience, in documentation, in letting someone's own words become their downfall. The magic was in choosing myself when everyone told me I was choosing wrong. The magic was in surviving long enough to become free. Final words. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for understanding that these experiences are real, damaging, and survivable. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's still performing, still enduring, still thinking they're alone. You're not alone. Your silence is strategy, not weakness. Your endurance is strength, not compliance. And when you're ready, when you've documented and planned and prepared, your freedom is waiting. It took me 13 years, but I found it. You can too. The spell that was supposed to bind me broke him instead. And that's the most powerful magic of all. Choosing yourself in a world that told you that you belong to someone else. Choose yourself. You're worth it. If you or someone you know is experiencing coercive control or domestic abuse, please reach out to local domestic violence resources. You deserve support, safety, and freedom.